Hey guys, what's going on? I wanted to give you guys a little update on a side project that I'm doing for one of my main projects, which is Skeletor. Come in, King Randor, you royal boob. No, not that Skeletor. 1987 Skeletor. You guys saw the last video update. I got some new parts for that. Got a bunch of stuff going on for it. And what we're going to do today is show you how to take this Viking foam longsword from Spirit of Halloween, which retails for about 15 bucks, 10 bucks if you get it on sale, and turn that into the Sword of Eternia. That's what we're doing today, and we're going to make it completely out of foam. And so what you'll need is a bit of foam clay, basic sculpting tools, probably some silicone to make a mold, unless you feel like sculpting both halves yourself. And you need some basic printed template of what you want the hilt to look like. All we're going to do is swap out the hilt that's on it for a proper crossguard and then fill the rest in with foam. And when you do that, you're going to end up with a couple of these, and we're going to slap these onto the sword. It's not the greatest in the world, but it's a cheap, economic way to get yourself a Sword of Grayskull without paying $200+ on Etsy. Let's check it out. So the first thing you need to do is go into Photoshop and print yourself a template that is 1:1 scale. If you do not have Photoshop, get a reference photo, get some graph paper, and measure out how big you want it to be. The sword you bought will help determine what size you're going to make this. I don't know what the actual scale of the sword is in the movie. It's friggin' huge. Dolph Lundgren said it was 8 feet long, which is obviously an exaggeration, so who the hell knows? Once you've done that, I want to sculpt, before I put it on my sword, what it looks like. So I grabbed some of my air dry foam clay, and I sculpt one out. Now, sculpting one out is a lot easier than it looks. The little skulls can be accomplished by casting up some other skulls or things like that. So, if we flip it around, that's actually a skull from... doesn't want to focus. That's unfortunate. That's a skull from a phantom ring. So I just impressed my phantom ring into some mold clay and then made a skull and threw it on the rough shape. It's actually fairly simple to tool out. It's not too complicated. Once you've done that, and you have one, you can go ahead and sculpt yourself another one, or you can make a mold and then press foam into that and make a second one so that you have two halves. Pretty simple. Once you do that, you're going to take your sword, and based on where you want this piece to line up, you're going to cut away all the excess. The reason you're going to do that is because you're going to round this off and slowly glue these edges in together so you don't need all this bit. So what you want to do is make sure you have enough to cover your base. So you cut that away, you line it up, you continue to cut away the excess, and I'm actually going to Dremel and round off these edges a little bit, which will make it easier for these to sandwich and foam together. All the middle pieces that don't foam together, I'm going to hit with foam clay. Sorry, my dog licking me while I'm doing this video. As for the gap between the blade, we're going to go in and fill that with, again, more foam clay. We're going to plasti dip that whole section and then go in with the individual paint. If you want to retool this piece, you go ahead and you retool it to make it more accurate. Honestly, this doesn't look too bad the way it is, so I'm just going to hit this with some gold rub and buff to match the hilt, and I'm going to call that a day. And then you got yourself a nice little Sword of Grayskull from the 1987 film that is con-safe that you can carry around. You can actually cut this off and completely resculpt a new pommel. You can take this as extreme as you want, but this is a basic budget build, and if you're not molding, this is my dog, if you're not molding and you're actually looking to just sculpt these, and you do it by hand, you can do this for the cost of a tub of foam clay and the cost of a sword. So you could actually make this for less than 20 bucks. So let's go ahead and attach these two pieces and see what that looks like. All right. And once we have... I'm going to remaneuver here. All right. Once we have taken it and put it on, we're just going to let the cure happen. And then we're going to go in and coat this a bunch of times with PVA glue and stuff. And we're going to coat this with some plasti dip and just do our best to kind of fill in gaps to a degree. You could do water sanding and different things like that, but what we've done is we've attached the two halves, we filled in the seams together with a little bit of foam, and you know, it's a little gawky, but again, it's just a foam project, and we've gone in and filled the gap in the blade with a little bit of white foam, so it takes to the silver a little better. And that's going to be our Sword of Grayskull. We've also gone in and just glued these little tips right in against the blade, just for a little bit added stability. But overall, not too bad. All right, so this is how it starts to shape up once we've added the foam and stuff. Now, this is not going to sit on your wall and be the most gorgeous thing you've ever done, unless you're a much better sculptor than I am, which is entirely possible. But as you can see, it starts to take a bit of shape. And it does, you know, I'm about 6'2", so this does have a nice kind of look to it, right? Do the classic He-Man pose. I have the power. Check out my bob haircut, you fuckers. But, yeah, overall, what I'm really looking to do is just have something that Skeletor can hold on to that'll immediately flash, like, oh yes, that is definitely Eternia. So the silhouette is really what I'm driving at here. I'm probably just going to keep this handle, like I said, rub and buff it gold. We're going to let this dry, we're going to plasti dip this, and we're going to re-hit the blade with the silver, we're going to re-hit this with the gold, we're going to just repaint the whole fucking thing. I like the handle, though. I think I'm going to keep that. You know, and if you can salvage as much from the original blade as you can, mazel tov. But, again, the main driving point here is that with very, very minimal sculpting material, you can make yourself a nice Sword of Grayskull. Now, I'm not going to have the finished version in this video. I wanted to mostly show you guys the construction of what the hell's going on. And I'm going to recap the entire process one more time. I used two different kinds of foam clay so I can see what the hell's where. But with foam clay in a mold or just basic sculpting foam clay, you can very easily convert any normal sword into a sword of your choosing. All you have to do is resculpt your crossguard. Hilt, whatever, I don't know. So let's go ahead and recap what the hell we did and what we used to do it. So, step one, find a sword from Spirit of Halloween. The one that I used is called the Royal Sword. Royal Sword retails normally $16, might be a little cheaper with your coupons and whatnot. The next thing you want to do is print a 1-to-1 scale template of your hilt. And all the added detail and things that you're going to grind out and do when you're done before you plasti dip, you can leave to the end, or you can try and sculpt it in right from the beginning. It's really up to you. I'm probably just going to pen detail some of the detail in on this because it does not, like I said, this does not need to reinvent the wheel here. It just needs to look right. The next thing you need is to pick up some foam clay and sculpt yourself a positive to mold, or sculpt yourself two halves that you could put together. If you're going to just do the two halves into foam clay, what I do recommend doing is sculpting onto some thin EVA foam. The first reason I like this is it adds a little bit of stability to the EVA foam. When you're doing foam clay, sometimes it can be a little floopy. So just sculpting it onto a flat piece that's traced out, stenciled, and sculpt directly onto that, that will give you a better adhesion when you put the two pieces together. And then when you have that gap, you can see mine has a little bit of that gap going on there. See if I can get the angle to... Can you even see it, really? There we go. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a ridge. And so I'm going to go in and sand this, of course. But what you do is you just fill all that in. And then it looks very nice. It's very sexy. You know, it has a very sort of molded in look. But the two pieces adhere very nicely. So then you just go in and you fill in the gap with clay until it's nice and smooth and exactly the way you want it. You can use water to smooth it. There's all these cool techniques for it, but in the end, I'm just looking for something kind of cool. I may make a better one of these down the line with my mold because, like I said, I did run a positive in resin, and this was with black onyx, and I can sand this down and make this very smooth and very much the way I want, and then run a second one and do exactly the same thing, and then I could adhere these two pieces together and make an entirely new sword. So I may do that down the line. I don't exactly know. But for now, this one's going to work just fine. And like I said, if I back up and get a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at, this is a very nice long sword. It's about 42 inches long. It's a little thin for a Sword of Grayskull, but I'm not, 6'5" or 7 or whatever the hell Dolph Lundgren is. So this will scale fine for a normal person. And no, it's not the prettiest of all the sculpts in the world, but the bottom line is you'll know it when you see it. It's exactly what you want it to look like in terms of a quick prop. That's just a reference. Because in the end, I'm not He-Man, I'm Skeletor, and this is really just going in the guard, and I get to say, Sword of Grayskull, mine for eternity, and you're just gonna pull that line. So It's just a nice little add-on, and it'll go on my nice wall of foam fantasy swords. So again, Sword of Grayskull, not too difficult to sculpt and modify with basic EVA foam and foam clay and a little bit of ingenuity. So you could pick this stuff up at Michael's, Joann's Fabrics, and Hobby Lobby. And the sword you can get at Spirit of Halloween. So for less than a $30 investment in every single aspect of what I used, not including the glue if you're using some glue, you can get yourself a nice Sword of Grayskull. So I recommend it. Hopefully you'll try it too. Builders build, and post below if you got some nice results and you want to share. I'd love to see. Thanks.